These are the lecture notes for Chapter 20, which is basically microbiology. It is on the, there we go. It is on the viruses and bacteria and archaea. Let me see if I can get this to show more of the oh, it's not going to. It's okay. This is fine. I did want to say, though, that there is a lot of information in this chapter since it's on all microorganisms or microbes, besides the microbes we call protozoans, because they are larger. It's going to include viruses, viroids, prions, prokaryotes, bacteria, and then the section on archaea, that is the section we are going to cut some material from. I am going to tell you about archaea briefly, and I'm going to tell you about 3 of the most common types of archaea, but we're going to focus on the first 3 sections of Chapter 20. So let's start with viruses. In this particular time in our lives, in this world that we live in, we're hearing a lot about various different viruses, and we are getting infected with different viruses. So we've learned a lot just from living in this time. But we may not have learned everything, and we may not have learned some of the biology, some of the concepts about viruses. So hopefully this will help you understand viruses a little bit better, and in that way understand when you get sick a little bit better. So a virus can infect plants, animals, and humans, and viruses, as we're going to learn, viruses can also infect even bacteria. Viruses really can infect any type of living thing. So viruses are associated with diseases of plants, animals, humans, even fungi and algae and bacteria. But viruses are not considered living things because they cannot reproduce on their own. They are host specific. They must have a host cell in order to reproduce. And that didn't work. So let me try something real quick. I have to do this sometimes when I want to use the highlighter or the pen. There we go. Okay, so a virus can only reproduce using the metabolic machinery of the host cell. So this kind of goes back to Bio 111, and a lot of the topics that we cover in Bio 112, we're going to have to review a little bit of the material that we learned in Bio 111. One of the things is that when our cells divide by mitosis or meiosis, but I'm specifically referring to mitosis right now, one thing that has to happen is that every new cell that is produced has to have a copy of the genome, or all of the DNA, all of the genes that the previous parent cell contained. So the 2 new cells that are produced must be an identical genetic copy of the parent cell. And the way that happens is that the DNA replicates. And for the DNA to replicate, it needs certain enzymes like DNA polymerase. So a virus does have its own DNA or RNA. So you can see here, it may have a DNA or RNA genome. So it's going to have a nucleic acid, but it may not be DNA, it may be RNA, okay? But that RNA has to copy, and then the genes in the virus that code for making new virus particles are going to also have to be copied, and then they're going to have to be expressed. So the virus is going to, in order to have new viruses made, we're going to have a new virus. And to make a new virus, you have to have the DNA or the RNA, and then you have to have all the mechanisms for replication, transcription, and translation. You have to have all the enzymes involved, like the helicase, ligase, RNA polymerase, all of those different enzymes that are needed for not only replicating the DNA or the RNA, but also making proteins. So making proteins would be, the transcription and the translation. So all of that happens with the help of the host cell. So viruses are non-cellular, and that means they're not considered to be a living thing, although they do have DNA or RNA. Okay, so we're going to talk about two scientists that were given credit for helping to discover viruses. Louis Pasteur. Pasteur is the biologist that is responsible for the process we call pasteurization. And he is given credit, and he is much more famous for his work with bacteria. But he did suggest that something smaller than a bacterium was the cause of rabies. So he knew it wasn't a bacterium, he knew it was something smaller, and he was the first to use the word virus, which is Latin for poison. So Pasteur, even though he never saw a virus, he did know that they existed, but he wasn't able to prove it. So we give him credit for being the first to use the word virus. Now, this is a listing of some of the more common viral diseases in humans. For the sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, we have AIDS, genital warts, genital herpes, Zika. Childhood diseases, we have mumps, measles, chickenpox, German measles. For respiratory diseases, we have the common cold, influenza or the flu, SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and then we have skin diseases like warts, fever, blisters, shingles, which are a result of chickenpox virus remaining in the person's cells, latent or non-active, and then it will later on, as they're older, it will express itself as shingles instead of chickenpox, but it comes from the same virus, the varicella zoster virus. Okay, and then digestive tract diseases, gastroenteritis, diarrhea. Now, some of those can also be bacterial, just to let you know. Gastroenteritis and diarrhea can also be caused by bacteria. But nervous system diseases like polio, rabies, encephalitis, Zika. Then we have smallpox, sometimes cancer, hepatitis, mono, yellow fever, dengue fever, conjunctivitis, which is pink eye, hepatitis C, and Ebola. These are all viral diseases. Now, you do not have to learn all of these examples, but what I would expect that you can do is when we get to the bacteria, in fact, I'll go ahead very, very fast. Let's find the bacteria chart. There's a bacteria chart that lists, here we go. I would expect you to know the bacterial diseases. This is table 20.2. Which ones are bacteria and which ones are viral. So I would expect you, if I listed the name of a disease like Legionnaire's disease, that you know that's a bacterial disease and not a viral disease. That you know the STDs, syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, these are all bacterial diseases and not viral diseases. Strep throat is caused by a bacterium, not a virus. I would expect that you know that. Which ones are viral and which are bacterial. So spend some time on table 20.1 and table 20.2. Okay, now let's move on and talk about the structure of viruses. Each virus has at least two parts. The capsid is made of protein, and the core is made of nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA. And the nucleic acid core can also not only be DNA or RNA, but the DNA, which we've always learned is only double-stranded, DNA can actually be single-stranded in viruses. RNA, which we have learned is only single-stranded, can actually also be double-stranded in viruses. So what you really have to know about the virus to classify it is, does it have DNA? Is the DNA single-stranded or double-stranded? Does it have RNA? And is the RNA single-stranded or double-stranded? And that helps us to tell a lot about that virus. The capsid, it says capsid or no capsid. That is not true. All viruses have a capsid. They don't always contain an envelope, but they all have a capsid. So a capsid is composed of protein. So you've got nucleic acid in the core, and you have a capsid that surrounds that core. The capsid is composed of protein, and then some capsids are surrounded by an additional envelope, which is composed of something similar to a plasma or a cell membrane, phospholipid bilayer type thing. But sometimes we say the virus is naked. That means that it does not contain an envelope outside the capsid. So every virus has an inner core that consists of nucleic acids and various proteins or enzymes. Enzymes are proteins, and these enzymes are necessary for replicating the nucleic acid and for producing proteins. So sometimes the virus has its own enzymes, and those are all found in the inner core of the virus. The covering of the virus is always a capsid, which is made of protein, and sometimes an envelope. All right, and here we're seeing some common viruses. This is an adenovirus, which you can see has a DNA core and then a capsid that's kind of geometrical. And then it contains these protein fibers called glycoproteins that help it to attach to the host cells. Then we have a bacteriophage, which is a virus that infects bacteria. It's got DNA as its core, it's got a capsid, and then it's got all these extra structures, a tail, and these little legs, which are called tail fibers. It almost looks like a spaceship with legs. But it does have DNA and it has a capsid. So these are actually, the adenovirus and the bacteriophage are examples of DNA viruses that are surrounded by capsids, and they do not have an envelope. But then here we see the influenza virus, which is an RNA virus, surrounded by a capsid, which is the green part. And then outside of that is the envelope, and the spikes are glycoproteins, which are recognized by the host cell. Then we have the tobacco mosaic virus, which is a plant virus. It's an RNA virus that has a capsid outside. The capsid is helical. Now, this is a word that you definitely need to know. All viruses are obligate intracellular parasites. Obligate intracellular parasites. And what that means, we know that a parasite exists in a very close association with another living cell, and it does harm to that living cell. Doesn't always kill it, but it does harm it. And intracellular means that it must live inside the cell, the host cell, and it doesn't really live because it's not a living thing, but viruses must reproduce inside a living cell. So they must spend some of their time inside a living cell. Obligate means they must. It means they cannot reproduce without being inside of a living cell. So they are obligate intracellular parasites. We can call them active or inactive, but we cannot say they're living or non-living. You can only culture viruses inside living cells. Sometimes culture means grow. Sometimes we will use a chicken egg, and sometimes we'll use a tissue culture to grow viruses and study them. There are 3 hypotheses about the origin and evolution of viruses. One set